The evacuation alarm echoed through the research station on Velker 7, its shrill pitch cutting through the thin atmosphere like a blade. Kaya moved methodically through the xenobiology wing, checking each containment unit, each observation chamber, ensuring every specimen had been transferred to the emergency transport vessels. The volcanic instability beneath the station had accelerated beyond all projections. They had hours, maybe less. She was the last human on site. The others had departed on the first wave of shuttles, but Kaya had volunteered to stay behind, to make certain nothing was left to suffer in the pyroclastic hell that would soon consume the facility. It was the human way, she supposed. Her crewmates from other species had looked at her with that familiar mixture of confusion and concern when she'd insisted on staying. They could never quite understand why humans would risk themselves for creatures that weren't even their own kind. The holding pens were nearly empty now. Just one more sector to clear. Kaya's boots clanged against the metal flooring as she jogged toward the juvenile enclosures, her breath forming small clouds in the cooling air. Life support was already shutting down in sections, conserving power for critical systems. She reached the final pin and froze at a small form huddled in the corner, barely visible beneath the thermal blanket that had fallen half off its trembling body. Rue, the Velkian cub, no more than 6 months old by their standards, orphaned when his mother had died from complications the medical team couldn't reverse. They'd kept him comfortable, studied his development, planned to transfer him to a sanctuary world once he was strong enough. Kaya had spent more time with Rue than anyone else. Something about the little creature had touched something deep in her chest, some ancient human instinct that transcended species. His large, luminous eyes, the way he chirped when she entered the room, the tiny 3-fingered hands that would reach for her through the observation glass. "Hey, little one," she whispered, keying open the pen. "Time to go." Rue looked up at her, and even through the differences in their biology, Kaya could read the fear in his expression. His fur, usually a vibrant blue-silver, had dulled to an ashen gray. He made a sound, something between a whimper and a trill. Kaya reached for him gently, but Rue scrambled backward, pressing himself against the wall. Another tremor shook the facility, stronger this time. Dust rained from the ceiling. They didn't have time for this. "Rue, please," Kaya said, keeping her voice calm despite the urgency clawing at her throat. "I need to get you to the ship." The cub's eyes were wide, terrified. He'd been through so much already, lost everything he'd known. And now, in his last familiar place, surrounded by chaos and the smell of fear, he was being asked to trust again. Kaya knelt down, making herself smaller, less threatening. She extended her hand slowly, palm up, the way she'd done 100 times before during their quiet moments together. "It's okay," she murmured. "I've got you." Rue's small voice cut through the alarm's wail, a desperate sound that nearly broke Kaya's heart. His translator collar flickered, damaged but still functional enough to render his words into something she could understand. "Please don't go." The words hit Kaya like a physical blow. In that moment, she saw not just an alien creature, but a child. Alone, terrified, begging not to be abandoned. The rational part of her brain screamed at her to grab him and run. The shuttle was waiting. The window for evacuation was closing. But Kaya looked into those enormous eyes and made a decision that defied all logic, all survival instinct. She sat down, right there on the cold floor of the holding pen, with the alarms screaming and the facility shaking itself apart around them. Kaya sat down and pulled Rue gently into her lap. The cub resisted for only a moment before collapsing against her chest, his small body racked with tremors that had nothing to do with the seismic activity. "I'm not going anywhere," Kaya said softly, wrapping her arms around him. "I'm right here." Her communicator crackled. "Kaya, we're at the final departure window. What's your status?" She pressed the button with one hand while the other stroked Rue's trembling back. "I need more time. The cub is traumatized. I can't move him yet." Silence. Then, "Kaya, the geological scans show." "I know what they show," she interrupted. "I need you to trust me. Extend the window as long as you can. I'll get him out, but I need to do this right." Another pause. "Understood. But Kaya, you have to, I know." "I will. Just give me time." She closed the channel and looked down at Rue, who had quieted slightly, his breathing still rapid but less panicked. "See," she whispered. "I'm still here." The hours that followed were the longest of Kaya's life. She sat with Rue, speaking to him in soft tones, singing old Earth lullabies that probably sounded alien and strange to his ears, but seemed to soothe him nonetheless. The facility continued its death throes around them, sections sealing off automatically, emergency lighting casting everything in a hellish red glow. Her team called repeatedly. She gave them updates, reassured them she was still working, still trying. But mostly, she just sat and stayed out. On the second day, the main power grid failed. They were down to backup generators, and those were being routed to the hangar where the last shuttle waited. Kaya activated her suit's thermal controls, creating a warm cocoon around herself and Rue. The cub had stopped trembling, had even eaten a little from the emergency rations she'd found. By the third day, Rue was different. He still clung to her, but there was less desperation in his grip. He made soft chirping sounds, almost conversational, and occasionally looked up at her with something that might have been trust beginning to bloom in his eyes. Kaya knew they were out of time. The geological readings were catastrophic. But when she stood, slowly, carefully, Rue didn't panic. When she lifted him, securing him in the carrier vest designed for juvenile rescues, he nestled against her chest and made a sound that the translator rendered as safe. The run to the hangar was a blur of collapsing corridors and failing systems. Kaya's lungs burned, her legs screamed, but she didn't stop. She burst through the hangar doors just as the final shuttle was preparing for emergency launch. Her commander stood at the ramp, face tight with relief and anger and something else. 3 days, he said as she stumbled aboard. You stayed 3 days. Kaya collapsed into a seat, Rue still pressed against her chest. Through the viewport, she watched Velker 7 tear itself apart, the research station disappearing in a cascade of magma and destruction. He asked me not to go, she said simply. Her commander, a pragmatic Zenthari with a reputation for cold logic, looked at her for a long moment. Then his expression softened in a way she'd never seen before. Only a human, he said quietly, would hear a plea like that and choose to stay. Kaya looked down at Rue, who was finally sleeping peacefully, his small body warm and trusting against hers. She thought about all the logical reasons why what she'd done was reckless, foolish, dangerous. She thought about the choice she'd make again, without hesitation. Yeah, she said, smiling despite her exhaustion. I guess that's what makes us human. The shuttle jumped to FTL, carrying them away from the dying world. Behind them, Velker 7 became nothing but a memory. But in Kaya's arms, Rue dreamed safe dreams, held by someone who had heard his plea and answered in the most fundamentally human way possible. She had stayed.